she works at Middlebury College. She does what we do, me and friends of mine do. I and friends of mine, excuse me, I'm retired now, do, and that is promote the humanities, and that's her job at Middlebury. She's gonna tell you why she's here. Please welcome her. I'm so, lunch today with her was just a happy time. And
Reconnecting with Peter. The real reason why I'm here is because I can't come in May.
That's right.
Truth be told, was that I had immediately responded to Matthew when the Centennial email went out, or mailing went out. And I said, of course, sign me up. And then somehow through conversations with my mother and whatever, that Peter said, oh, I hear you're coming in December. That's great, will you help me do this? And then I found out my son's actually graduating in May, and so I can't come in May, so of course I'll come. I guess I'll stand for a little bit. What we thought we would do is tell you a little bit about the story of what I did as a senior project with Emily Dickinson and working with Peter, and then from that launch into a little bit of describing what I now understand to be her brilliance. It's not that I didn't then, but at the time when I was selecting a senior project, and I just knew I wanted to do something unconventional, not do an internship. This place, of course, didn't exist then, otherwise I would have had all kinds of great ideas. And Peter was my advisor and, of course, my favorite teacher. And I also had been doing some acting, and I was just trying to gather up some ideas. And it was, I had seen Julie Harris do the Belle of Amherst recently. We haven't been able to figure out how. I think she was here. We're not recalling in my family. Peter's not recalling if we did it through Hawken, but somehow I had seen it and was blown away, as I know many of you were when you just saw her YouTube. Somehow it just became one of the ideas of what we would do. I had a strong interest in theater and literature, and so that made sense as the way to do it. So for 6 weeks, while other students were working with engineers or working in schools or whatever, I was on campus. And during the day, Mr. Lovell, I don't remember his first name, Jim, right, head of admissions at the time, opened up his house to me to study. So during the day, I tried to learn about Emily. I read what she read. I read her poetry. I read the biographies about her. I tried to channel her as best I could as a 17-year-old, which meant I also fell asleep on the couch a lot. Went for walks in the woods, probably not in the way I would go for walks in the woods today, but at least for that time, tried to get a grasp of who she was and what the script was about. And then in the afternoons after school, would rehearse with Peter and with Bill Reese, who was our interim director of theater at the time. And Peter and I had edited the Belle of Amherst down to about 1 hour, and some pieces that were appropriate for me. And that was kind of the process. The outcome, which I want to get to, at the time, I was excited to learn and actually understand some of her poems. I thought, oh God, that's cool. I'm smart, I get it. But obviously not all of them. I certainly learned that she was very misunderstood. Yes, she was an eccentric, but not in the way that people characterized her. I saw her poetry as iconic and certainly pushing the envelope, and appreciated that about her, that she was very unconventional for her time and a strong female figure in the middle of Amherst in the 19th century. But where she was being characterized as lonely or a spinster, I got that she, in fact, wasn't any of those things, that she was independent by choice and was uninterested in convention or small talk, not because that was boring to her. That was not about what was really at the core of her heart. And I got that to some extent, but not as much as I got it in revisiting all that work and her brilliance in revisiting this with Peter recently. The other thing that people underestimate is her humor. She actually had a terrific sense of humor, and she used that to create the character that the town of Amherst assumed her to be. So that was her delight, actually. And the other things that I think I want to note, she was obviously very much in her head, but it's not that relationships or words or being wasn't very important to her. In fact, it was her intensity that people couldn't handle. I think because she was so emotionally wrapped up in what she was experiencing that it was too much for many people. Which of course now I'm appreciating that intensity and that vitality and that vision and depth of feeling. And I know as an adult, several years older, obviously, the moments when I can most relate are when I'm my most mindful, when I'm going for a hike or seeing a play or something where just the exquisiteness of how it expresses our humanity and in the eloquence, that's what she was about, and that's what I appreciate now. The only other thing I want to say before I dive in is, I mean, on the one hand, she was disappointed when people couldn't meet her there, and on the other hand, it seemed she was perfectly content to continue to write and do what was important to her, and I think some of that comes through. To kick off a little bit, William Luce, who wrote the play, in the beginning of the book, he talks a little bit about the process. He spent 2 years going through and compiling and sorting out through her letters and poems. And so the script is almost entirely her words. He did very little to add to it. He just wove it all together in a story. And as he says, to depict the humanity and reasonableness of Emily's life. I say reasonableness because I believe she was consciously elected to be what she was, a voluntary exile from village provincialism, an original New England romantic, concisely witty, heterodox in faith, alone but not lonely. And I think that really captures her and what they tried to do. And as he says, with the will to choose or to reject. And I choose, she says. He goes on to say, the essential Emily is secretly saying to the audience, pardon my sanity, pardon my jubilation in nature, my terror of midnight, my childlike wonder at love, my white renunciation. Nothing more do I ask than to share with you the ecstasy and sacrament of my life. And in the play, Emily's life is presented as a deliberate covenant with nature and art, a premeditated channeling of creative desire. Excuse me. And that, I think, really captures what I've learned and hope to convey a little bit tonight. And finally, he says, the Bell of Amherst is a love affair with language, a celebration of all that is beautiful and poignant in life, as it turns out. Actually, that's what I'm going to say. And it's what I've rediscovered today. It's like hearing a great sermon, or I don't know how many of you listen to On Being on the radio and NPR, but it's just one of those where you just hear where people say it in the most exquisite way, and you shudder at how they're able to express it, what we feel every day, and you wish you had that ability to do that, and you just want to tell somebody. And hope they get it. And I think that's a lot of what Emily was about. She just wanted to tell somebody and hope that they would get it. So to dive in a little bit, I just wanted to do a few of the poems and the pieces from the play. And I want to start with her humor. And she's talking about baking her black cake. And she says, sometimes I bake one for a neighbor and I enclose a short note that is usually so obscure no one can understand it. I hear my little notes are becoming collector's items in the village. People compare them to see who has the strangest one. Excuse me? We must be careful what we say. No bird resumes its egg. That'll keep them guessing. And that reminds me, I must send a note to Mrs. Hill. She's just been admitted to the Maplewood Infirmary. Surgeons must be very careful when they take the knife. Underneath their fine incisions stirs the culprit, life. That'll cheer her up. The next passage is about her love affair with language and the intensity that she feels when she's just as dealing with language, let alone nature. Words are my life. I look at words as if they were entities, sacred beings. There are words to which I lift my hat when I see them sitting on a page. Sometimes I write one, circumference, and I look at its outlines until it starts to glow brighter than any sapphire. I hesitate which word to take when I write a poem. A poet can choose but a few words, and they have to be the chiefest words, the best words. A word is dead when it is said, some say. I say it just begins to live that day. If I read Keats, Shelley, Shakespeare, Mrs. Browning, Emily Bronte, oh, what an afternoon for heaven when Bronte entered there. And they make my whole body so cold, no fire can ever warm me. I know that is poetry. Have you ever felt that way? If I feel physically, if the top of my head were gonna be taken off, I know that is poetry. But these are the only ways I know it. Is there any other way? My friend Helen Jackson, you'd like her. Well, she's moved to Colorado and she's a fine scholar of words and a well-known writer. Well, she has the facts, but not the phosphorescence. Phosphorescence, now there's a word to lift your hat to. Can you spell it? To find that phosphorescence, that light within, that's the genius behind poetry. And the next piece is, and I think I've alluded to this, but I haven't said it, she's deeply spiritual, and in fact, there's a mysticism. I mean, she's very mystical in the way that she views nature and puts it all together. And it's how she really identifies with people too. Do you know that every one of you is to me a poem? You and you, each one a rare creation. I suppose that's why I love you and you love me, whether you realize it or not. I discovered that secret a long time ago about the souls of people. And I thought that being a poem oneself precluded the writing of poems, but I saw my mistake. The poet lights the lamp and then goes out himself, but the light goes on and on. Essences are marked for, no, that's not the right word. Labeled, that's better. Essences are labeled for immortality. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain. Father's house and my garden, this is my world. And for my companions, I have the hills and the sundown and my dog Carlo, largest myself that my father bought me. They're better than beings because they know, but they don't tell. And the noise in the pool excels my piano. You see, I've never had to go anywhere else to find my paradise. I found it all right here. The only world I wanted, right here in Amherst, Massachusetts. Massachusetts, now there's a word to lift your hat to. But now paradise, it's no journey because it's within. But for that very cause, it's the most arduous of journeys. I travel the road into my soul all the time. I dwell in possibility, a fairer house than prose, more numerous of windows, superior for doors, of chambers as the cedars, impregnable of eye. And for an everlasting roof, the gables of the sky. Of visitors, the fairest. For occupation, this. Spreading wide my narrow hands to gather paradise. That's become my mantra, by the way. And then moving from her own intensity and how that translated to some of her relationships, she talks a bit about her relationship with Sue, who was her sister-in-law. And she gets at that a little bit in this. From this room, we can look over to Sue's house. We call it the Evergreens. This, of course, is the homestead. And there's a path between just wide enough for two who love, but no one uses it much anymore. Sue and I used it more than anyone. She was the only one who understood my need to write. Oh, I loved her dearly, but she didn't understand my love. Perhaps I don't understand it myself. I've always been intense about relationships. At times, my love overwhelms people, and it puzzles me. My business is to love. It's dangerous to love as I do. Bliss is so unnatural, don't you think? The path is overgrown with weeds now. I guess it's best to abandon paths when you find they lead nowhere. Where am I next? So next she talks about, or we're going to talk about, not she. There's a lot in here, by the way, if you didn't read this, about her family and that whole relationship with her mother and her father and her sister and her brother, all living together in the homestead. And I'm obviously not touching on as much of that. But this gets at how she views being seen but not being seen, and her desire to be seen in the way that people don't see her. Perhaps no one will ever read my poems. They seem to me like an undelivered letter lost in transit. Destiny is strange. Going to be famous. If fame belonged to me, I couldn't escape her. If she didn't, the longest day would pass me on the chase, and the approbation of my dog would forsake me. My barefoot rank is better. We never know how high we are till we are asked to rise. And then if we are true to plan, our stature touches the skies. Like the warbler I found on a bush at the foot of the garden. Why sing, I said, when nobody hears? My business is to sing, and then away it grows. My business is to sing. What difference does it make if no one listens? Perhaps you laugh at me. Perhaps the whole United States are laughing at me. I can't stop for that. But just to have been made alive is so cheap a thing. All else inevitably adds. I find ecstasy in living. The mere sense of living is joy enough. Take all away from me, but leave me ecstasy. Egotism is a hard thing. Oh no, I was going to skip that. Never mind. Sorry. Not so smooth in my transitions tonight. As I revisit. And then just a few more. This is just a little passage that again just grasps at her need to express and to write. It's after she's said goodbye to the one, her one true love, who's left for the last time. She says, oh, and then she found out that he died. Yes, I still write poetry, but not as much as I used to. There are so few listeners, and those who should be the best listeners, like Professor Higginson, are deaf. But even yet, when I see a tall, pale snowstorm stalking through the fields and bowing out my window, I find I must translate my feeling into poetry. And finally, no, two more. This last piece, or next, gets at her clarity at needing to be here to do what she does. Making the choices of a small talk note, socializing with the community so that she can have the time and passion and energy to write. Everyone is somewhere but Emily. Emily is here, always here. I never saw a moor, I never saw the sea. Yet know I how the heather looks and what a billow. No, wave, and what a wave must be. I never spoke with God, nor visited in heaven, yet certain am I of the spot as if a chart were given. And I think in a lot of what you read in the homework, we learned about her, and I didn't talk about this earlier, but her, she thinks a lot about God and eternity and what that's about, particularly as the video talked about, that death was pretty present in their time. And so she talks a little bit about that, and that's where I'm gonna transition back to you. My earliest friend wrote me the week before he died, "If I live, I will go to Amherst. If I die, I certainly will." Democratic death. But life is short, isn't it? When one is done, I wonder, is there not another? And then if God is willing, perhaps we are neighbors again. I wonder if I ever dreamed, or if I'm dreaming now. I cannot tell how eternity seems. It sweeps around me like a sea, and this world is such a little place. Just the red in the sky before the sun rises. So let us keep fast folded hands, please, that when the birds begin, none of us be missing. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. We passed the school where children played, their lessons scarcely done. We passed the fields of grazing grain. We passed the setting sun. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling on the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice but a mound. Since then, 'tis centuries, but each feels shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. And I'm going to turn it over to you for our favorite poem, but I know it's coming later. Yeah.
Here's what we're doing. This is the plan. Well, this is the next part of the plan. You don't get to hear the whole thing yet. 10-minute break. Okay? Fill your glasses, get something to eat, have some chowder, as they say in New England, and just hang out with one another. We're going to show the first 10 minutes of the PBS video if you missed it while the break's going on. So if you're not a chatterer or a hanger-outer, you can sit with Emily and have a glass of wine and watch it. And then when we come back, we're going to do about 20 minutes, I think we'll have left, of a class. So don't drink too much wine.
It's on my list, though.
So here's what's happening, guys. And this is you, and I mean that, and I'll explain why in just a second. But what Amy and I thought would be an idea, and Holly was in on this too, would be to. Holly calls them Dickinson's question mark poems. Like, what? What? You know, if you've read Dickinson, you've experienced this. I had a department chairman a while ago at Hawken, a woman who said that it's not possible for men to appreciate Dickinson. She was wrong. She was wrong about a lot of things. She's not here anymore. But what I want to do is this. I want to do this. This was submitted by Leanne, and it's one that I've never seen before. And believe me, I read Dickinson a lot. And to me, it's a total mystery. But don't read it right now. Just listen for a second, please. And it goes like this. Wallace Stevens, the Hartford poet, said this: "The poem must resist the intelligence almost successfully." What did he mean? What does it mean?
You should filter it intuitively rather than too intellectually.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's the feeling that matters more than anything. And the sense that comes with the poem. T.S. Eliot said, and I think he was being a jerk when he said that. I probably wouldn't have liked him anyway, but it doesn't matter. But he said that meaning is the meat the burglar holds out to the guard dog. And so that idea that's from a symbolist poet and a snob. Emily was neither. And so what I'd like to do is this. I think that every time you read a poem, especially by this woman, you need to read it at least twice. So I'm going to ask Stacy to read it first, okay? This one, and slowly, yes. And then we'll have a second reading, and then I'm going to ask you. I don't know, okay? I mean, I don't know. I've done some homework on it. Nobody really knows for sure.
Yeah.
This is a blossom of the brain. This is a blossom of the brain, a small italic seed, lodged by design or happening, the spirit fructified. Shy as the wind of his chambers, swift as a freshet's tongue, so of the flower of the soul, its process is unknown. When it is found, a few rejoice, the wise convey it home, carefully cherishing the spot, if other flower become. When it is lost, that day shall be the funeral of God. Upon his breast, a closing soul, the flower of our Lord.
What? No, and I Googled this, and the only reference to this is made by a young woman who did a sculpture of a woman's head with a flower growing out. I don't think that's what we're working with here. But in a way, we are. I mean, we're working with a lot of Emily Dickinson's favorite stuff. Nature, God, eternity, possibility, and all those things. Leanne, here she is. Right?
I'm crying.
You can cry. You can cry. Holly said I wouldn't get through this session without choking up. So far, I have.
This is the blossom of the brain, a small italic seed, lodged by design or happening, the spirit fructified. Shy as the wind of his chambers, swift as a freshet's tongue, so of the flower of the soul, its process is unknown. When it is found, a few rejoice, the wise convey it home, carefully cherishing the spot, if other flower become. When it is lost, that day shall be the funeral of God. Upon his breast, unclosing the soul, the flower of the Lord.
Good job, girl. Yeah. So what do we got working here? I'm totally serious. I would really like to know what you see. Leanne did a nice, that was Leanne who was red. She did a nice commentary on this. But I was going to save it so that I could hear from you guys. You know, I could point out a couple of things and then I'm going to turn it over to you. Her imagery is natural, it always is. She was fond of blossoms. She was a botanist and an award-winning botanist. She was not a transcendentalist. Emerson was an influence on her. His early works were published when she was a teenager. She read him at Holyoke, so she knew the transcendentalist thing. And the transcendentalist thing is very simple, and to me it's very huge. It's like the Buddhist thing. There's a universal spirit, and it's inherent in all living things. And she bought into that. She divorced herself from the church. We'll see that in a bit later. But this one has got a mixture, as in most of her stuff. It's got a mixture of Christianity, of a belief in something beyond. But like Leanne said, the funeral of God. I don't get it. And so you guys have to explain it for me, because I'm not going home until you do. Well, maybe.
I think this is about love.
Well, let me hear
Love. I really do, and I think that when love dies, it's the funeral of God. Because that's not what God wants. I think this is all about, and how, in the unknown of why or how we love. Why do we love one and not someone else, or you know, what is it between, that's what my interpretation is.
I think you're safe with love with Emily Dickinson no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Here's my question. Who is the his in the second stanza? Shy as the wind of his chambers. Now, wait a minute. She capitalizes nouns, and if it was God she's talking about there, that would be capitalized, wouldn't it be? I mean, you guys have done a lot of reading, I can tell. So who is his? And she uses chambers a lot. But what this, the first word threw me off.
Shy.
This.
Oh, this.
Yeah, no, this. Yeah, no, in the first stanza, the very first word. This is what she's talking about, right? It must be.
Well,
Yeah. No,
that's what I mean.
I know, but I'm not arguing with you.
It's about the brain. It's kind of like all thought and emotion and all the stuff that's not a human body. Everything that exists that's not tactile is about that, is what is that connection and that universal being, which is God.
Is love a blossom of the brain or the
A
heart?
feeling. I think that's what he's dealing with, is the intellectual part of a feeling of love. That's my interpretation.
I think it's something.
I looked up italic, and for her, it would be a reference to the Italian, what do you call it, when you're writing a script that was popular in the 17th century that she liked. So italic doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, I don't get it at all. An italic C?
Well, so I kind of, when I read it, I think it's kind of like thinking, and so maybe for her, thinking is part of the writing process,
Ooh,
right? Because like
ooh.
shy as the wind of his chambers is when you've got an idea but you just can't get it out. It's like it's in there but it's shy. But then swift is a fresh at its tongue. I don't really know what a fresh it is. But when,
A quick running brook.
because when your ideas are coming, right? They're just coming. You write them down as fast as you can.
No, I do. And to her, and to many people in her era of her ilk, they were called Connecticut Valley Puritans. And most of them were Puritans, but a lot of them were transcendentalists. And a lot of them, like Emily, they didn't know. They saw nature as the primary manifestation of spirit. And so the fresh, yeah, no, I like that.
I like that.
Nina.
I especially like the word italic used there. It really makes you think about a different font, a different way of thinking about what she's talking about. I think that's what italic is about there. And
To draw attention to see.
yes, and I think it's brilliant.
No, I do too. And fructify means cause to be fruitful. Those are the two I have to look up. But usually I have to look up a lot more than that. And like Stacy said earlier, what you get with her, and it came out in Amy's choice of readings, what you get with her is unbelievably careful choice of words. Unbelievably careful. I mean, I think it was Stacy who said she shaved meaning all the way down to the absolute core. And I don't know, though. I got a lot of questions about this.
So would you say it's inspiration?
Yeah.
I mean.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I had to lock onto something, and which is what Ann just said, I mean, I would say that here's another thing, and this is new, and I'm not sure what I think about it. And if you're signed up for the St. Paul seminar, I'm going to talk a lot about it. Some people think that Dickinson was an epileptic, as was Dostoevsky. And most epileptics will tell you that a seizure is a horrible, horrible experience. Dostoevsky, and perhaps this lady, there's a split second before the beginning of the seizure in which Dostoevsky claims that you see into eternity for a split second. And it's the most joyous, fantastic, unbelievable thing. there may be an element of that in this, but we have no idea. I mean, I reject outright some of the things that are said about her. I mean, she's gay, who cares? Yes, ma'am.
There was also, there's a British writer on religion in general. I mean, she wrote about Buddhism and Muhammad, and she was a Catholic nun, and she believed she was having mystical experiences.
Right.
And then it turned out that she had epilepsy.
Interesting. Do you know who that
I'm
was?
just trying, it's annoying me that I can't remember. She
Is it
wrote,
Saltzman is the author?
no,
It's a man who wrote books about the woman.
she wrote The Spiral Staircase,
Oh.
which was autobiographical.
Oh, no, I was thinking of, what's your name? Moore.
So, yeah,
Laura
if it comes to
So what
me,
was that? That was something at the top of the staircase.
but basically she also kind of left Orthodox religion and, you know, moved into it.
And that's what Emily did when she was 32. And we're going to read that poem, which is my favorite. And Hallie Moore isn't here, and she wanted to know what my favorite was. Is or was. Yes, there was a hand up. Stacy.
I was gonna say, I think she's defining what she's talking about in the fourth line, the spirit fructified. So what is that? The spirit, however it manifests within the human being. You know, if you want to say that spirit is really something larger than what's within a human being, it's something that's fructified within the human being. Anatomically, sort of speaking, it's a part of the brain, but not necessarily an actual part of the brain. We're like a part of the mind, you know, like an abstract. And then the rest of it, like a definition of how that takes shape within a human being, that part of ourselves, that spirit that's not concrete, that's not matter, that's not based in superficiality, that's not based in, you know, humanness, you know, humanity, but that's more spirit within us. And then the end of it, you know, if that part of us gets lost, especially in mass, that it would be the funeral of God. That would be that part of us that stays connected to God, that's God within us.
Yeah. A closing soul, the flower of our Lord.
Could she just be talking about inspiration?
I think so. I think we're right, and that's what Ann said and someone else did. I mean, I think that's the bottom line in this thing. And I think inspiration to her is the spirit, and it comes from elsewhere. Now, does she mean the Holy Spirit? Does she mean the universal spirit? Does she mean spirit in general? We'll never know.
Peter,
Yeah.
if it's anything positive, whether it's love, spiritualism, ideas, creativity, hope, why would she say when it is found, a few rejoice, the wise convey it home?
Not everybody gets it?
Right.
No, I think that would have to be
And
it.
then she shares that spot, and she mentions, Amy, you mentioned the spot too, when you were reading before. She talks about coming back to a spot that might be her hot spot for inspiration.
And it's a funeral of God, and God is capitalized here, but it's also the flower of our Lord. I think this leads us to the next poem that Amy was nice to let me talk about, my favorite, and we only have 5 minutes, so we're going to it. And it's this one. This is 1862. She's 32 years old. I'm going to have a hard time. I can't read this aloud because I have the same problem that Leanne has. She did. This is 1862. Okay, there's a secession that's just happened. So it's a contemporary word. Anne, would you read?
I'm seated. I've stopped being theirs. The name they dropped upon my face with water in the country church. I'm finished using now, and they can put it with my dolls. My childhood and the string of spools, I finished threading too. Baptized before without the choice, but this time consciously of grace, unto the supremest name, called to my full, the crescent dropped, existence whole arc filled up, with one small diadem. My second rank, too small the first, crowned, crowing on my father's breast, a half unconscious queen, but this time adequate, erect, with will to choose or reject, and I choose just a crown.
Yeah, adequate and erect, those are her very favorite words. Once more, Deb. Thanks for volunteering.
Is this where she's denounced religion? Yeah, so.
Organized religion.
Right, organized religion. Oh, you want me to read it? I'm seated. I've stopped being theirs. The name they dropped upon my face with water in the country church. I'm finished using now. And they can put it with my dolls, my childhood, and the string of spools. I've finished threading, too. Baptized, before, without the choice, but this time, consciously of grace, unto supremest name, called to my full, the crescent dropped. Existence's whole arc filled up with one small diadem. My second rank, too small the first, crowned, crowing on my father's breast, a half unconscious queen, but this time adequate, erect, with will to choose or to reject, and I choose just a crown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the crown of thorns?
I don't think so. I think that she uses diadem and crescent and crown. I think they all represent some kind of spiritual loyalty.
Do you think she found the divine feminine inside herself?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do. And in a culture like hers, in a town like Amherst, which is primarily Puritan, stuffy as hell. And if you were the squire, her dad was a huge man, and he was one of the founders of Amherst College. He became a congressman. He was a lawyer. A guy came to take her dad's daguerreotype, his photograph, and he set the camera up and he said, Squire Dickinson, will you smile, please? And Squire Dickinson said, I am smiling. Yeah. I mean, that culture, if you're 32 years old, you're already suspect because you're a loner and all those kind of things like Amy mentioned before. If you quit the church, you're going to have to believe that you're carrying something with you. And I quit the church around the same time that she did, and so this means a lot to me, but for the same reasons. I mean,
Sounds like she had a very profound spiritual experience.
I think she did.
And it reminds me of William Butler Yeats. He wrote a poem on the birth of my children.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a verse in there, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it basically says the same thing.
And he did the same thing in Wild Swans of Crew. Yeah, no, really. Yes, and that's a really good comparison. She and Yates, or her and Yates, which is it? Her. Oh. Spank my fanny red. So there it is, guys, 7:30. Thank you.